Hello and welcome to the Philippines. I'm going to go over some travel information, immigration information, go over some reasons that I remain optimistic that things are going to open up sooner than many of the government officials say they are, not only here but across the world, and give you a couple of predictions that I think will happen as we start traveling in the future as well. This is coming into Cebu Mactan International Airport a few years ago. But first, I came across this weird law. I think it's still on the books in the Philippines. Annoying people can be charged for being merely annoying. Now, I resemble that statement too often. I'm sure many of the people that know me will agree with that. I have never been arresto minor or fined 5 to 200 pesos or both, and hopefully it will never happen in the future. So first off, they are not allowing the normal on-arrival tourist visa, so you can't just fly here and get accepted. They'll send you back to where you came from. For those of you, and I'll get into that here shortly, for those of you who have the proper visa, you must have the valid and existing visa at the time of entry, of course, pre-booked accredited quarantine facility with pre-booked COVID-19 testing provider, and it's subject to, this is the key, subject to the maximum capacity of inbound passengers, uh, depending upon how many they can work through their system any given day. And here's the first part of the categories that are allowed in. Filipinos are allowed back in, foreign spouses and minor children of Filipinos. But they had an issue with people printing. They were allowing people just to bring their marriage certificate, and people were printing fake marriage certificates. So you need to get a visa from the Philippine embassy nearest you before you can come here now if you're married to a Filipino. Children with special needs, regardless of age of Filipinos, foreign parents of minor Filipinos. And you can read the rest of that if you like. Now, the bottleneck, unfortunately, is that there are 700,000 plus Filipinos working overseas who've lost their jobs and wanting to come back to the Philippines, and they've repatriated about 200,000 of them at this point in time. So you're competing for those spaces in quarantine facilities and testing spots with hundreds of thousands of Filipinos as well, and space on limited flights as well. Now, if and when you get a flight and you have the proper documentation to arrive in the Philippines, there are procedures that you must go by, and you need to stay in touch with your airline as well as the airport that you're flying into. I know people who have planned to fly to Cebu by way of Manila and Manila by way of Cebu. And one case in particular, a Canadian friend of mine, married, has a marriage visa, and got that all approved at the embassy in Canada, and was going to fly to Manila. He had a connecting flight to Cebu City, and they called him a few days before that, and they said, you need to cancel your flight. You need to do your virus testing and quarantine for a couple of days in Manila while you wait for your test results. So he canceled his hotel booking and flight to Cebu City, got to Manila, and took his test. Actually got the test that same evening. Cost him, I think, 4,500, 4,900 pesos, something like that, close to 100 US. He rebooked his flight to Cebu City, and as he was told by the airline, and got to the airport, and security there said, "Why are you traveling? What's your purpose to travel?" And they tried to find a category that he would fit under. He didn't fit under any category that they could fit, so they said, "Well, go to the ticket counter, buy your ticket, and then come back here, and then we'll see if we can figure out a way to get you on the plane." So we went to buy the ticket, and the lady wouldn't sell him a ticket. Says you don't fit under any of the categories that are allowed to fly, even with your negative test. Now his very good fortune is that he's got a good Filipino friend he met in past trips here, who happens to, he was a former pilot, I believe, with Philippine Airlines, perhaps. And he contacted him and said, "Look, this situation, what can I do? Any ideas?" And anyway, after some time passed, conversations going back and forth, and him handing the phone to the ticket counter, and he had no idea what they're saying. But eventually, he was able to board the plane, get the ticket, and board the plane. So here again, not just in the Philippines, but all over the world, it helps to know the right people, and it's not just something here in the Philippines. Another good reason not to burn bridges. You might need those people sometime in your life. Now let me get on to some good news, I think, and some reasons why things might open up quicker than many people are projecting right now, which is the middle of next year before they start letting in international travel many places. First off, we're seeing more international flights coming and going out of the airports in the Philippines. We're starting to see domestic tourism open up, flights to domestic areas. Baguio and Boracay are the first ones, but more places open up to the locals. There are also a number of quick and cheap virus tests that are coming out. Several are waiting for FDA approval, and they're kind of dragging their feet on this, it seems. But very cheap, we're kind of a saliva test where you can take it very quickly and gives you pretty accurate results. One issue that's come up in the U.S. Is that many of these very good tests actually pick up even little fragments of virus, even though and it takes a lot of virus to make you sick, not just one or two molecules, and depending on the person. So these tests are so sensitive, they're going through 40 cycles and magnifying the virus load, basically. And even though you're not sick and you can't transmit the disease, they're calling you positive. So the NFL, even before the CDC came out with their report and the New York Times reported on it, they were going to a less sensitive test. The airlines and the tourist industry are also pushing for those types of tests. If you haven't seen it, New York Times and CDC reported your corona test, maybe it shouldn't be positive. I think over 90% of the tests are picking up the very, very small amounts of virus. Probably why so many people are asymptomatic or very, very mild, like myself. I think I had it, 4 months ago. Mild fever, a little cough for a couple of days, nothing I'd ever go to the doctor for. There's quite a bit of data that vitamin D deficiency is one of the key markers of those who get the disease and get it very severely. Not only that, but generally as people with the comorbidities, other illnesses, as well as age factors in as well. So wouldn't it be better to protect the vulnerable? And there are also a number of other medicines that are working very, very well in treating this virus. That's why you're reading about cases. Stop reading the headlines. You're reading about cases, but you're seeing very little about deaths anymore. And I've looked at so many charts, and the deaths are very, very, very low anymore. There is more and more data out there for those who will look at data. Many don't look at data, they look at the headlines. That's all they see. Oh, more cases, more cases. We all need to look at the data and drill down into that information, find out who's getting sick, how is it happening. About 96% of cases in the Philippines are 96% are asymptomatic, no symptoms, or mild symptoms. And here's a couple charts from the CDC, Center for Disease Control. Philippines way down at the bottom down there, second from the bottom on the deaths per 100,000 population. Look at the data. Here we go. Houston, Texas reopens way back in 427, I think. And you see where the Houston, the BLM protests started. Who would ever thought there would be an increase in cases? Something similar happened in Arizona. A lot of the hospitals on the southern border with Mexico were flooded with Mexicans coming across the border. They don't have very good hospital facilities, medical facilities, and they come across the border, and we bring them to hospitals. The hospitals in the southern part of the state, we're moving them north to hospitals with more beds in Phoenix and even up into Flagstaff. There are reasons why you see more cases. Now, if the data is not enough, and the fact that the tests are oversensitive, and a lot of these positive cases really are not positive. I'm not sure if the same test issues are across the world or just in the U.S., where they're too sensitive and they're giving many, calling them positive than when they are only fragments of the virus. If those things are not enough, UNICEF warns that the lockdown predicts 1.3 million child deaths, and indiscriminate lockdowns are not an effective way to control this. Doctors raise the alarm about health effects of the shutdown, mass casualty incident, and the list goes on and on. The cancer screenings that aren't done, the cancers, the breast cancers, all the different types of cancers people haven't gotten in to get the screenings done, to get various treatments, to take care of all the necessary things, and their diseases have gotten worse and worse and worse. And the list goes on. The poverty in itself, more and more people. Why don't you see this in the front page news of the mainstream, the lamestream media? More and more are starting to call, including hundreds of doctors in the U.S. who are calling for the economy to open back up. And unfortunately, this cancel culture that we're in, the big tech companies that like to censor anybody that doesn't go along with the mainstream line can get censored, can get their YouTube and their sites taken down. And look at the headlines. Killer flu outbreak is to blame for 42% spike in deaths. 64,000 people died. Now, this is from 2018. This is from the flu in 2018. I just checked the UK coronavirus deaths, and they're at 42. 20,000, 22,000 less than back in 2018. Waiting for a vaccine. They tend to be less than 50% effective. These are flu vaccines over the years. They've never really come up with a really good corona virus vaccine over the years. So you don't know how that's going to turn out. There are winners and there are losers in a worldwide economic shutdown. And there are people who would like to see the shutdown continue, and they hope to profit greatly from this. There are, humans are emotional beings, and we see headlines and we hear the headlines on the news, and shame on the news media for not doing more investigative reporting and putting out more information about this, rather than just stating, oh, it's this many cases, this many cases. Look, you're going to die tomorrow if you don't stay in your house. The fear factor, and the fear and stress actually reduces your ability to fight off illnesses. So that's even worse. But anyway, you buy a car, you buy a house, a television, whatever. You do cost analysis. You think about it. But we're emotional beings. In the end, we make emotional decisions. A lot of these people with the lockdown, they're dealing out of fear and out of emotions, I think, rather than, there's a lot of good data out there for those people who will look at it. Or they're only looking at, they're in the medical field. And that's all they're looking at. They're not looking at all the other harm that's being done. Anyway, I think there's some very good reasons, and I think in the coming months, more and more people will press for the opening up, and I think it will proceed at a faster pace. I certainly hope so, for everybody's sake. Anyway, thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hope to see you in the Philippines or some of these other countries soon.